It's really easy to come up with video ideas in the Annapolis Valley here in the summer weather because there are wineries and beaches and amazing views everywhere. But what is an aspiring YouTuber supposed to do when it's been raining for the majority of the summer? Well, let me give you a bit of an insight into my thought process right now.
Okay, so if it's all raining and water is falling from the sky, why don't we go watch water fall off of other stuff? What is that called again? It's called a waterfall, right? Yeah. And if it's been raining so much, then there'll be even more water to fall off of the other stuff. Genius!
So this video is also kind of an apology to my parents in a way, because this idea came from a time when I was trying to show my parents around, and I took them to a place where there's usually this amazing waterfall. I'd gone and seen it the previous fall when there was a bunch of water around, and what I didn't realize is by the time you get to the summer, there's no real water left in that waterfall. So it wasn't so much a waterfall as a water trickle. Is that a thing? Yeah. So I made my parents hike up this huge hill to go see a water trickle. So this is my way of atoning for that by showing my 7 favorite waterfalls in the area. Now, just to preface all of this, this is not an exhaustive list by any measure. These are just my personal favorites. So with that, let's get started with my 7 favorite waterfalls in the Annapolis Valley. Our first set of falls that we come to on this adventure are the Morsebrook Falls, which are just to the south of Kempville in a very quiet little suburban area. Now, there isn't much parking there, so that is one thing to say. This isn't exactly tourist-friendly. However, the minute you come off the road and you're greeted with this beautiful little pathway that runs along this brook where the water runs down, the one thing I'll say is that the pathway is very narrow. You start to feel like one of those bloody mountain goats clinging to the side of the cliffs here. The surface is very loose. You can see as you're walking along that the pathway has given away a fair bit, has fallen down, been washed away by rain, and also the shale and the slate start to fall away with the barest of touches, so do be careful as you're walking along this path. So as long as you're okay with walking along a very narrow little windy path, it's worth braving it because you get these amazing views of the brook as it starts to build up more power as you get closer and closer to the falls, and you get more of these eddies and whirlpools and minor falls starting to form. So definitely worth taking a trip up this way.
So the walk down here is awesome because you get these huge slate cliffs as you wander down this narrow path, and as you come round here, you get to these amazing minor falls, but that's nothing compared to what's just around the corner, so let's go.
The sound of the water rushing through here is just beautiful, and on a day where it's been raining and you've essentially got the place to yourself, you're going to have a really nice, peaceful walk through this area. So keep pushing your way down the narrow path and you'll start to see the real falls peeking their way out of the pathway for you. And there's a reason why these falls made my list, because they just look so spectacular with all the different angles and the moss and the ferns. It just looks like something out of a storybook, and I love this one. So I definitely had something really insightful and amusing to say in this part, but it was completely drowned out by this raging waterfall that you can see behind me, so I had to re-record it, but I was saying something along the lines of maybe liking the video and subscribing to the channel, something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was. These falls are fantastic. It's one of those places where it's just off of the highway, right opposite a suburb, and you get there and you think, this can't possibly be here. But it is. It's this little nature oasis right off of a main road. And so it's definitely worth stopping off and stretching your legs and getting out into a little bit of nature in the middle of a town. So if you're in the Kempville area, definitely stop by the Morsebrook Falls. Next up, we've got the Black Hole Falls, which are further north and right on the Bay of Fundy. And I like this one because it is really rugged. It's off the beaten track, you follow this really cool little trail, and you definitely don't stumble while you're filming because that would be completely unprofessional. Until you reach this gorgeous river that goes through what looks like a canyon, all these rocks towering above you. And as you look down the river, you start to see it get more and more speed and more water as it crashes towards the falls. It makes such a nice walk to get down there, and you start to hear the falls long before you see them. Things start to get impressive until you see it drop away over the edge. And what I really like about this one is that it feels like something out of Lord of the Rings or something. The forest that's in this area has that really sort of old growth look to it with all kinds of fern and moss. And as you come around, you just see this amazing waterfall just crashing down through the trees. And it's one of those views that I just love to go and see as often as I can. Now, you may have noticed that I don't have any footage from the bottom of these falls, and that's because I know of only two ways to get to the bottom of these falls, and neither of them are exactly tourist-friendly. The first one is what I like to call the sketchy rope of death, and this is a piece of rope that somebody put here. I don't know if it's an official trail route, but it just goes down a sheer cliff to your definite demise, so I wouldn't recommend it. The other way that I've heard of is that you can, at low tide, walk all the way from Baxter's Harbor to Black Hole. However, I've not done this, and if you're going to attempt it, I would say you have to know your tide times before going. Definitely check it out at tides.gc.ca. You'll find the link in the description. But it's definitely important to know your tides before you go, because if you get caught out in this area, it could go very badly very quickly. So please be careful. So maybe just enjoy these ones from the top. They're really pretty and you'll really enjoy yourself, so just trust me on that. Next up, we have the Bordenbrook Falls, which are just up from the famous Cape Blomidon. And the reason that I mention these falls is that most people arrive here and they see the sign for the beach and they immediately head down there, and they miss the fact that there's this amazing trail system here. But I highly recommend that once you're done seeing all the amazing sights at Blomidon down on the beach, that you head back up the Bordenbrook Trail and you'll be treated to one of the nicest waterfalls in the area.
So there is a trail to get up here, but you can also be lazy like I did and drive and, just come and park here at the side of the road. But
a nice man from the park would later come to tell me that this was not the case and you can't actually park here, so don't do that, kids, because you're gonna look like an idiot like me. However, I was the reason why a sign was put up to say no parking, so isn't that fun? So unfortunately that does mean that you will have to walk uphill to reach the falls, but it's definitely worth it, I promise you.
just beyond this barrier here, there's actually a whole waterfall system that you would have no idea that is here. We lived here for 3 years and had absolutely no idea this was here, because most people get to Blomidon and then they go down to the beach and they see the beautiful cliffs and they see all of the little waterfalls that are down there. And this is a little hidden gem tucked away back here. And I hope that if you make a trip out here to Blomidon that you come and get to see the Bordenbrook Falls here as well. Now, one thing I will say is if you're coming out here, especially in sort of May to June, bring bug spray. You'll thank me later. They're eating me alive right now.
But the bugs won't even bother you anymore once you get to the falls themselves, because they are one of the prettiest set of falls on this list. The water crashes down this naturally made staircase and has formed this gully that the trail follows. And the minute you enter the trees here, you realize that there's this amazing natural cooling effect that's helped by all the mist and the spray that comes off of the falls themselves, but it's a natural reprieve from a hot and humid day, so it's definitely worth coming in here just to escape the heat, if nothing else. Now, these were actually the first set of falls that I took my poor parents to after our failed attempt to go find that other waterfall. And they were actually suggested by a nice neighbor of mine who heard our story of failing to find water at the other falls and said, well, why don't you just take them to Bordenbrook then? Those are always running. And so when I take friends and family around nowadays, I tend to go to this one because I'm usually guaranteed to have some gravity-fed watery goodness at this one. Now, if you can bring yourself to face the true horror that are stairs, you can actually get up close and personal with these falls as they snake their way down this gully and down the trail system. And I would say they're a must-visit for most people, as it is a relatively easy walk, and they're a must-see in this area. Now, going back to the Bay of Fundy, we have Baxter's Harbor Falls, which are just further down the coast from the Black Hole Falls. So if you're visiting Black Hole, you might as well come see Baxter's Harbor as well, because they're just a short drive from each other. And the reason I love these falls is because you really don't have to walk far before you come across these incredible falls that cascade over the rocks here. And as you walk up to them, you see all of these trees clinging to life on the edge of these jagged rocks, and the spray hits you in the face, and the wind and the sound. These truly are some of the most impressive falls that are on this list just because of their sheer size. And there are also some amazing caves that you can take a look in whilst you're here and rooting around in the rocks below.
So I love coming down to Baxter's Harbour because not only do you have this stunning waterfall here that's running particularly well today because of that rain that we've had over the last little while, but you also get, in my opinion, one of the best places to see the sheer scale of the tides here, because Baxter's Harbour has these humongous rocks that litter the beach that are completely submerged when the tide is in. And when you stand next to them and they're towering over you like that, you really get a sense of the sheer scale and the sheer amount of water that must be covering this area at high tide. And also, on a clear day like it is today, you get this sort of glassy effect to the bay, and you can see right across to Cape Split, the famous Cape Split. So it's got a bit of everything. You've got a waterfall, you've got a beautiful beach, you've got the tides, and also you can see Cape Split from another angle. So what's not to love? So definitely Baxter's Harbour is on our list for the waterfall, but also for everything surrounding it.
Now, further down the same coastline, we have the Horse Harbour Falls. Now, this set of falls will take a little bit of a walk to get to, and you have to make sure that you're there at low tide. And I definitely mean at low tide because we start the journey at the harbour itself, and you can see just how much water actually comes into this area when you see the tide line in the harbour here. And you really get a good sense of that when you're down at the far end of the harbour, and you see just how high the water comes up the top of here, and you have the peephole for scale at the top. So definitely be careful with the tides.
So this is actually one of the unique things about coming out here after there's been a ton of rain like there has been over the last couple of weeks, is that sometimes all of that rain combines with the heat of the summer and just forms just fog. And coming down here on a foggy day like this is kind of cool because usually you get this stunning view across the bay, but on a day like this, you can just hear the ocean in the background, and you're sort of treated to these big rocks just sort of coming out of the mist as you walk along the beach, and it's a pretty unique sight. So still worth a visit even on a sort of more cloudy, foggy day like this.
But do be careful if you're walking down the beach on a wet day, because not only will the rocks be slippery because of the rain, but also because of all the seaweed and algae that are growing here. But persist through, and you'll come to some shallow sea caves for you to explore. And what I really like about when it's wet is that you get the rainwater dripping off of the caves, and I really like the sound that it makes. Though your journey may be hampered by the fog in terms of seeing much of the bay itself, there's still plenty to do on your walk down to the waterfall here, which could include finding cool rocks, finding some balls, explore a mystical sea portal to a whole other dimension, and find more cool rocks. And definitely not slipping on the rocks as you're filming and making very manly noises.
Jesus. And another cool thing about coming here on a foggy day is that it adds that air of mystery to the waterfall here. So just behind me, I can hear it. It's probably not picking up on the microphone, but I can hear the waterfall in the mist. It's kind of cool to hear that it's there, but you can't quite see it till you get close enough. So, let's go find it.
As you walk further down the beach, the falls just start to peer out of the mist, and it's just one of those cool sights to see. And then you finally get there, and they are really a nice sight to behold. So you can go right up to these falls, take a refreshing shower, and try not to think about where the water came from. And just to show you the difference, this is the falls on a rainy day versus a couple days later when it was beautiful and sunny, and they're really not running as well. So this really illustrates my point of how coming here during the rain is a good thing to do. But you can't deny the view is much better on a sunny day. Now, heading west down the beach, you actually get to see some bonus falls when we've had some rainfall. These falls aren't usually here unless we've had some heavy rain, so definitely take the time to come down this way. But taking a walk down this part of the beach, you also get to see these huge boulders that have been thrown from the cliffs above, and they're strewn across the entire coastline here. They're actually amazing to see because some of them are the size of a bloody truck, and you just think, how the hell did they get here?
So there's that old saying that if a tree falls in a forest and there's nobody around to hear it, does it make a sound? And that's actually what I think about when I come to places like this and I see these huge boulders that have been thrown about 200 feet from the cliffs over there. And was there anybody around to hear the astonishing noise that that would have made? And the fact that it's been able to travel this far down the beach makes you very wary of walking underneath these cliffs as you're going along here. So if you're visiting the area, definitely be careful, because you don't want to be the person who ends up underneath one of these bad boys.
So not only do you have the waterfalls, but you also have this stunning piece of the Fundy coastline to explore. And once you're done with the beach, there's also the lobster pound, so you can get yourself some fresh seafood and learn more about this fascinating little place. So definitely make Halls Harbor a stop if you're visiting the valley. So heading back into the valley itself, we've actually got two sets of falls that are very close together, the first of which is the Crystal Falls. It's a little bit of a hike to get to these falls, but it's an easy path, and if you've got a friend with you who definitely wants to be on camera, that can certainly help things. The pathway to it is actually really nice. You'll go past literal babbling brooks, you get to see this lovely forest scenery, and you may even come across some idiots trying to balance on a log. You might also make some little forest friends. Go over some cool bridges, and take a look at the raging river that comes down from the falls themselves. You may have to navigate the odd puddle here and there on a rainy day, but you'll be okay. But it's all worth it when the sun comes out on your little hike and make your way up to the falls themselves. And after a lot of rain, there's a lot of water that runs through this area, and the falls themselves get quite powerful. Now there's actually a couple of ways to get to these falls. We took the route that gets you to the top, but you can actually get to the shores of the lake and see them from below as well. And check out this footage of the same falls in the wintertime. You can see that all of that water is completely held back by a wall of ice, except for a small amount that bubbles out of the bottom there. But I would definitely recommend coming to see some of the falls on this list in the winter, because there's no better example of the sheer force of winter and the sub-zero temperatures that we get here. So it's actually kind of cool to see all of that water being held back and encased in ice like that. And last but certainly not least on our list of great waterfalls in the Annapolis Valley area, we have the McMaster Mills Falls, which are only a short drive away from the Crystal Falls across this awesome old metal bridge, which I always get a kick out of because we don't have bridges like this in England. I'm just a nerd like that. And if you're in the area visiting the Crystal Falls, you may as well come and see the McMaster Mills Falls as well, because they're so close by that you'd be silly not to, and they're a really great experience.
So today I've come to McMaster Mill Historic Park, which is a great place to come on a rainy day like this, because you get the whole place to yourself and you can check out everything without anybody bothering you. But it also showcases the waterfall here, because you get it running really, really well. And you can see why they would have dammed it up here in the early 20th century to run it for electricity. So it's kind of a good time, even though you're getting very wet. But it's also one of the few places on this list that feels truly touristy, because when you get here, there are signs, there are walkways, there are sort of look-off points, and a bunch of signs telling you about the history of the place.
And what a history it is, with the park detailing the story of the McMaster family and the settlers of Rockville Notch, with an interpretive trail through the ruins of the various buildings and mills that used to stand at this site. And unlike most archaeological sites, though, you can see more than just a series of small walls here, as the interpretive signs showcase the humble beginnings of a lumber company becoming a fully self-sufficient community, complete with various mills and electricity being generated here from the early 1930s. The site was owned by the McMaster family and run as a mill operation until the early 1950s, when it was moved to nearby Kingston, hence why the site has fallen into decay and we're left with the rubble that you can see today. Now, I'm only briefly summarising the history of this area, and there is much more to see and learn at this park, but one of my favourite parts of this area is the look-off spot at the top of the boardwalk that gives you the very best view of this beautiful set of falls. And all in all, this is a great day out. You get to learn a little bit of history and get a glimpse at what life must have been like for some early Scottish settlers. And also you get a great look at one of nature's true marvels here. So the McMaster Mills Historic Park should definitely be on your to-visit list. So there we have it, a list of my 7 favourite waterfalls in the Annapolis Valley. Now, as I mentioned at the start, there could have been so many more on this list, and if you happen to know of any other waterfalls that you think everybody should know about, just drop a comment below and let everybody know. A major part of this channel is me actually learning more and more about this beautiful area that I live in, so I'm happy to learn about these things, and I can imagine somebody saying, "Oh my god, Adam, How could you not have told people about the Moose, Bear, Eagle Falls? They're 1,000 feet tall and have rainbows everywhere. So if you happen to know anything like that, definitely let us know. Also, don't forget to check out my website, which is linked in the description below, which has my blog as well as links to other helpful resources if you're traveling or thinking of moving to this area, so definitely go check that out. As always, thank you so much for watching, and if you consider giving this video a like and a subscribe to the channel, that would be amazing. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.